Greetings. Just here admiring this amazing view up here above the Klickitat River in southern Washington. This beautiful November afternoon. Chilly in the shade, but certainly a nice spot up here above the oaks to sit and reflect. I was just thinking about one of the injuries I had out in the wilderness one time along a nearby river. And it got me thinking about it because I kind of smacked my foot here on a rock pretty bad. I thought I'd stop here and see how it is. Yeah, it's just going to be a little bruise, nothing too bad, but I've certainly done worse. And I was about 5.5 miles from the vehicle, a good 4.5 to 4 miles off trail up a river, and about an hour before dark in camp. I was doing a little woodworking, hanging out, as usual, with a little Mora knife and my little bare feet, and was not paying attention to the direction the knife was cutting, and I came real close to slicing into one of my toes. Went, man, I better be real careful here. There's a long hike back, and that's a very sharp knife. These little knives are, they can be razor sharp, and even after a full day of using it, it was still, as it is right now, razor sharp. And I didn't learn my lesson and still had my foot in the danger zone and was still stupidly cutting towards my own body. Don't ever do that. I knew it was wrong. I did it anyway. The epitome of stupid. And I paid the price. The knife slipped out of the wood and went right into my toe, my little toe on this foot. And it sliced a flap of skin open on it, and blood was everywhere. And you want to talk about pain? Boy, did that hurt. Now, I'm 5.5 miles, backpacked in on day 2 of what should have been a 3-day backpack. And I have a bleeding injury that won't stop bleeding. All of my bandages got soaked through with blood, and all of my first aid kit was exhausted, and it was still bleeding. It hurt so bad to try to apply pressure. It was such a large wound. It was a good, half of the top of my toe was pretty much sliced off, except for a tiny little bit of skin still connecting it. Blood everywhere, and, what the heck do you do? That was a tough call because you're alone in the wilderness in predator country. There's certainly mountain lions and coyotes out there, and just at dusk, an hour before the sun went down, even in summertime, that's getting to be critter time. And I got really concerned that I was going to become lunch because I smelled like fresh blood, and I was the only living thing smelling like fresh blood for miles probably. And I thought, gosh, am I going to sit here in camp and bleed into my sleeping bag all night and not be able to sleep with my toe in agony inside the sleeping bag? That's kind of a spendy sleeping bag. I didn't want to ruin a $310 sleeping bag, just because I didn't want to hike out right then. And I thought to myself, right now, you're in the early stages of pain. You have endorphins kicking in, and I happen to have some, pardon me, high CBD cannabis with me, so I gave myself some pain relief, took advantage of the natural pain relief my body was giving me, and made the call to pack up camp and try to hike out. Now, that day, I had no sandals. I had only hiking boots. It's one of the reasons I don't wear those things anymore. So, to hike out, I had to basically shove my foot into that hiking boot with agonizing pain, and it immediately is just bleeding into it. And of course, then we're hiking out, limping out, limp. Every single step is pain. You want to talk about pain when every step, is pain for 5.5 miles. And you have the added stress of, I'm out here, this was out in the sage country, and so I'm out here in this sort of savanna land where any mountain lion could be hiding around any bush, or any pack of coyotes could come and get me, and there's no trees, there's no shelter, there's no place to hide. Whatever happens. So the call was to urgently get out, but it was a limp, and I had 2 river crossings ahead of me before I even got to any trail. And so that was a whole adventure of taking some of the big garbage bags that I always kept with me. Always keep a big Ziploc bag with you, or a big hefty bag, or a garbage bag, or a leaf bag with you. It can always come in handy, and it came in handy. The river wasn't deep, it was wadable, so I made a boot with that and kept the wound dry and out of the nasty river water. And 2 river crossings, and yes, using more of that high CBD pain relief cannabis, trying to get through, but the agony. Several times I was like, I can't do this. I physically cannot do this. It hurts so much. Every step was squish, squish with blood. It was disgusting. It was horrifying. It was extremely stressful. But finally I made it to the trail, rebandaged the shoe or the toe, shoved it back in the boot one more time, and started limping the last bit of trail. And it was, 3 miles of trail, 1.5 miles of decent trail. And when that last straightaway came into view where I could actually see the bridge over at the parking area, you want to talk about the sense of relief, but knowing still, that's more than a mile away. You still have to make it. And I mean, after all of that ordeal, the agony was still just as bad as ever. And of course, by then it was pretty much full dark, and all I had was my headlamp. And it's, a decent headlamp, but still, that's the only light, and you're the only creature out there, and every little noise. And of course, there's deer and little critters moving around, and every little noise sounds scary. All the little things sound like they're huge, and you think the huge things are the ones, the little sounds sneaking around, and it's just here. The fear is starting to ratchet up, and the pain and the blood and the squishing and the soggy shoe of blood. And as I came around that last little hill to where it's just a few little rises before me, maybe a mile left, I started noticing one of the most amazing things. A whole bunch of little twinkling things all over the trail. Everywhere I shined my headlamp, I was going, what the heck is all that? Looks like little diamonds, little yellow, blue, white, red, little twinkles, almost like stars twinkling. I was going, what are those little things? And I kept walking a ways and limping, got a little farther, and I just couldn't help it. There's all these little twinkling lights all over the trail, and I came really close to the ground and looked carefully, and it was a whole bunch of little spiders all over the place, making their little webs at night. And every time they looked up at the headlamp, their little eyes were reflecting back like little sparkling diamonds. And it was one of the most magical and amazing experiences I can ever describe. Having, this horrible experience, having to self-rescue with a foot injury, and the last stretch being the way being lit by twinkling little twinkles of spider eyes going right this way, follow the trail, this is where the open ground is. And I, of course, are trying to be careful not to step on the little ones. Spiders are our friends. They do very, very important work. They just don't need to be on us. They can be near us, just not on us. But that was, all the fear went away. Everything, all the anxiety went away. My heart melted. Mother Nature was saying, don't worry, I still love you. I'll always love you. I'll always be here. No matter what, even in the worst time, I'm going to be here to help you out. And you want to talk about a psychological boost. When you're that mentally taxed, so tired after, being alone out on the trail and doing all the camp work. And I was pretty tired to have to hike all the way out, with an injury. And it was just amazing. And I did, of course, make it back to the truck here to talk about it, and got back. And the idea was to go to the emergency room, but it was still another half an hour drive from the house, basically the little place that I stay when I'm off the road. And I just was exhausted and gave up and went to the urgent care clinic the next day, and they patched it up. And that is how I got this little scar. If you can just about make it out on the little toe, you can just about sort of see. And I'll use the very knife here to point out, this is the offending knife, and it slit right along the edge. It's hard to see with the shadow. There was only this little flap of skin here holding almost the entire top of the toe on, and it was just open meat. And so it healed up, and it's all together now, and I've got a kind of a cool little scar it'll focus for us. It's a cool little scar to show for the ordeal, and I know now that I can survive that sort of ordeal by myself. And I also know that I'm out in the wilds on the river by myself, using the razor sharp Mora knife to never ever cut towards any part of my body. I think it's time to maybe rub a little yarrow on this new foot injury here. It'll probably just be a bruise, and get some of that pain relief going, disinfect it a little bit. I get back down here onto the Klickitat Trail and got on to the next adventure. I want to thank you very much for joining us here along the Klickitat River in southern Washington. Take a few moments to tell you a little story about how I cut my toe.